You speak in like haikus almost.
I speak in sound bites.
You do. They're easily digestible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're like, it's like we're in your head when you speak, but you're not acknowledging that at all. So you're.
Yeah, I mean, memes are the in-game currency of life.
Oh, that's t-shirt.
Who are the real true believers? They're doing it again with the whole coffee drinking. This is awesome.
You're very perceptive because I don't think anyone else is.
Never.
It is literally in unison with the same cups. How do people not notice this? Okay.
You've explained this to other people, right?
Actually, no one's asked me this question.
No.
In the decades I've actually been in
Really?
business, yeah, no one has asked me if I personally review them or if my dog.
Ben, welcome to the podcast, man. We're excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
So in our kind of research, I've noticed that you've done 2 TED Talks.
Yeah,
One
TEDx Talks, yeah.
TEDx Talks, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm curious about is why did you choose to make one of the topics immigration?
Oh my gosh.
You could have talked about so many different things.
Yeah, it's personally very meaningful to me. I spent 10 years of my life fighting the agencies that were involved in my immigration process because there was a whole bunch of like issues that came up. It was unrelated to me. It was with my parents' immigration paperwork, and you realize just how messed up that system is, and how it's almost like a judicial system that is beholden to no one. Right? Because if you're not a citizen of the United States, you have no political power. So if you're an immigrant and you're going through a judicial system, they are not accountable to you. So they can treat you like whatever the hell they want, right? So fighting for the rights of people who don't have power in the system is really important. And because it happened to me, I wanted to make sure that people knew how difficult it is for even entrepreneurs and other people who the United States theoretically wants to become a citizen here.
I guess one thing that's interesting is I mean, recently I've started to see a lot more people, especially in like the startup space, get O1 visas almost handed out to them by their venture funds that they raised from. Apart from that, have you seen anything kind of change since, in the year since you've given the talk?
So O1 visas, like you said, have been handed out by a lot of people. I think it's a really great program because it increases the likelihood of someone with skills immigrating to the United States. H-1B should be expanded. There's a bunch of people fighting for this. I think the Jobs Act actually, was it almost 10 years ago now, that actually expanded the program. And I think that's why the O1 visa actually has grown. And then it's funny because like, if you live in Canada, you're not allowed to come in under a bunch of visas that other people can. Like we actually like treat Canadians a little bit differently than everybody else and sometimes worse. And, in your opinion, like you're like Canadians, right? It's like, why don't we let more of them in? They just want to move down here.
Yeah.
They have to like go home like every few years and things like that. And it's kind of annoying.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, O1 expanding is like fantastic.
And then apart from O1 and H1B, have you seen any other changes that have made it easier?
No, unfortunately not. Actually, the pandemic's actually made the process worse because it's slowed down and things like that. It's a very costly process. I don't think we're going to see any kind of immigration reform in the next few years. So I think like we have to use the tools that we have so far.
And then to almost kind of transition, you were building Cheeseburger. And what year did you start building this? Yeah, so
I started this company called the Cheeseburger Network back in September of 2007, right before the crash.
Ouch. And then did you see that, by that time, had you already kind of gotten over most of your visa issues or were you still going through it?
I had already gone through it.
You had already gone through it?
I was on the other side, yeah.
Gotcha.
Luckily.
And so so it's not like, the Cheeseburger Network helped you with any of those?
No, it wasn't. And it was like I was working on an H-1B at a startup prior to that.
Got it.
Yeah. So in between that startup and starting Cheeseburger, I had actually resolved those issues.
Got it.
But it's like if I had this cloud of like being kicked out of the United States over my head, would I have started a company? Probably not. Right. And the world would have lost out on, more cat memes, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about that. How would you describe Cheeseburger?
Yeah. So the Cheeseburger is the company that ran sites like I Can As Cheeseburger, home of lolcats, cats with captions on them, basically. So these were like OG internet memes, right? Before anybody knew what a meme was. Like before anyone knew how to pronounce a meme, right? It was like memes, memes, like what are they? Like fail blog, know your meme. We brought back animated GIFs. Like I remember like we were on WordPress.com like hosting these animated GIFs and we had like 10x our bandwidth throughput because every image went from like 50K to like 2 megabytes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this was people had forgotten about GIFs, and now, there was a whole treasure trove of them you could actually bring back.
Wait, so there's two things interesting. So you essentially started memes on the internet.
I can't take credit for that, but I had a big hand in lots of people discovering what an internet meme was. Yeah.
Well, you're the OG meme lord.
I am the OG meme lord. I am one of the OG meme lords.
Okay.
And we're gonna.
Are there other people with like this specific, like you have to earn this OG meme lord?
I'm gonna start an institution that will hand out OG-ness of internet memes at some point, but maybe I'll do that after retirement.
That could be a ranking. We could make that, right? Like a tiered ranking system.
Only if you can like search back in the Wayback Machine to like start prior to like 2007, because I want to make sure I get credit for all the ones that I have.
Okay.
If you start it now, then it's not OG.
You're right.
It's like LG, right? Now. Late gangsta.
Yeah.
One thing that was really cool to me about Cheeseburger was there was this concept of a reality TV show.
Oh
yeah.
So it's like Silicon Valley.
Except it was in Seattle.
And it was real.
And it was real. It was a reality show. And take it with a grain of salt, right? Like every reality show is highly produced behind the scenes. But it was a lot of fun. So the reality show, which is actually, I think, still available on Apple TV. You guys are looking at each other. You're like, shit, we should have found some.
We should have watched the whole thing.
We should have watched it. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was picked up by Bravo, the cable networks. I was, a cable TV reality show star.
Memes will get you that far.
Memes will get you everywhere.
Wow.
How many episodes did you do?
6 episodes. Yeah.
6 episodes.
Yeah.
And what was the actual theme around it?
It was actually about the company, Cheeseburger. And so it was a bunch of people who worked there. And we had shenanigans. It was like kind of like The Office. Like that was the theme that they wanted to portray. So you can see me like do interviews where I'm just like, yeah. And I don't know what that guy was thinking when he did that. It's like the narrative behind it and stuff like that with like the blinds and shades behind you.
Oh, you did all of that?
The whole 9 yards. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It was like supposed to be like a internet meme reality version of like The Office.
How established were you guys at this point? Like in terms of the company?
I think there were like 100 employees, a couple 100 million MAUs. Yeah.
Wait, but you can't tell me that all 100 employees were like media trained or able to be themselves on
so
camera.
They segregate you into a little corner. So they have like a handful of employees that work on the reality show.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so there's actually a few scenes in the show where people have multiple laptops on their desk. So like my wife was actually on the show. And so like my wife will be working on her laptop and there's another laptop. And the reason was that Apple had sent us laptops to use as a sponsored like product placement.
Okay. Oh, wow.
But we already had laptops.
Yeah.
And so like people like waiting for the shot and they're like doing work.
Oh, and then they switch it. They move to the other.
But it's like, I already have a Mac. Why do I need another Mac? But they're like, you have to.
Already on Macs.
You already on Macs, yeah. They're like, you have to use the Mac that they sent you. And so our answer was, great, we'll just have everybody have 2 laptops.
Did anyone comment, did anyone call you guys out for that?
I don't think so.
So in 2007 or whenever this was, it was just, if you saw the show.
2013, yeah.
So in 2013, if you saw the show, you thought that it was just normal for startups to have 2 laptops.
Oh, that's a cool way of looking at it.
I mean, I guess it kind of
so much tech.
More tech is better. You want a blockchain? We'll give you 10 blockchains.
How do you think that this startup show that was based in Seattle impacted Silicon Valley and how people perceive, tech culture?
So what's funny was at the same time there was another show called Silicon Valley that was on HBO. I think it was right after us. And it was doing such a good job of just skewering tech and just like calling us out on our bullshit. And I was like, that was pretty funny to watch because we were, people would email us and they would be like, I just assumed that people who ran Failblog were 2 dudes without their shirts in a basement. Right. And we're like, oh, no, we're like a actual real company with real staff and we get advertisers and all that stuff.
What was the process of monetizing or actually running a company like in 2013?
Yeah. So the thing that's interesting is we got started during the Great Recession. And so imagine like advertisers were literally going out of business. I think the Tribune company had gone bankrupt a while, like right after we started, and they owed us like $150,000. So imagine you're generating revenue. You're like, yeah, we're going to be like ramen profitable. And like your biggest advertiser is like, sorry, we might belly up and we can't pay you. And I'm like, but you're this massive company. How is that possible? And like everything you know about how to make money, like it was suspect. Right? You're like, shit. Maybe
those 90-day receivables never coming in, right?
Yeah. There's a reason why they're 90-day receivables. So we had to like be really super scrappy and we had to get to profitability because I don't think we could have gotten funding again. right? Like 2007, before the bust, like people are funding startups, and you'll take a wild idea. The moment there's a crash, they're like, oh no, that's way too insane.
So how much money had you raised before?
2.25.
Okay, and how long did you have to make that stretch?
So we became profitable within 3 months.
How?
Google AdSense. I mean, we were like, so imagine this operation, right? Like in the very beginning, I am on my couch at home, and I get submissions of people using our meme editor to create captions and user-generated content. And I sit there and I have to select which ones to post the next day. And so our overhead is like super low, and our traffic was just growing like this.
But isn't this easy to copy? Like if I'm seeing you guys generating such great traffic, like how did you deal with that?
It's a script, right? You just copy.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the difficult thing. I think one of the downfalls of the Cheeseburger Network was that there was very little barrier to competition. We were disrupted by Facebook and Reddit, right? Because you could just start a meme site on Reddit for nothing, and you have a baked-in community, and you have a ranking system, and the Reddit votes, and so it was much more scalable of a business. Whereas we were more editorial focused, trying to move to a tech platform, right? And it was costing us time and money. And by the time we were making our migration, mobile had taken off, and we're like, "Fuck, we're already behind the curve." We don't think we can. We don't have enough resources to actually go tackle mobile.
So if you were to go back right now and kind of try to avoid the cheeseburger fail, would you have just pivoted to mobile? Would you have started a Facebook page? What would you have done?
I would have probably just started out in mobile and taken the traffic hit from the beginning. And then I would have probably created something much more scalable using software and less editorial judgment, right? Gotcha. I think it would have been much harder to compete with Reddit, but I think there's space because it was Dig and Reddit at the time. And so we didn't know which was going to be the winner, like which type of social community platform was actually going to win.
Right.
And so I think there was space for at least 2 or 3 more. Like Stumble Upon was a thing at the time, right? Like all these social discovery sites were around.
Interesting. And then even kind of larger scale than that, right now when you look at the creator economy, Mr. Beast just raised at like what, a $1.5 billion valuation?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Furkan was telling us now we're back into like 2000, like the .com bubble, where now you're starting to see unicorn creators, and it's like this open territory.
Yeah.
What do you think of, where we are at, or where we're at right now with the whole creator economy?
This upcoming recession is going to be a really interesting time because it's going to separate. In every recession, there is what's called a flight to quality, right? In other words, people like Mr. Beast actually do well because all of the risk taking that happened in the mid to long tail in a recession will go to the winners, right? And so you're going to see a consolidation, I think, with some of the existing space. And then you're going to see the birth of the next generation of stuff. Because the moment you realize that you're not going to make money for a year or two and you can actually sit down and build, and you don't have to worry about immediate results, you can actually invest in the future, take more risks. So while the market consolidates, builders and founders will take more risk. Right? And we'll see that play out over the next 2 to 3 years as the economy heats back up.
So do you think we're like, okay, so in your mind, you're saying, once you know that you aren't going to make money for 1 or 2 years and you can start to build.
Yeah.
Are you implying that now it makes sense for like creators to raise money?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it may be the window is very small right now. So I don't know how it's going to play out. There's a bunch of VC firms that have capital that they have to deploy. Like VCs can't sit on the sideline for like more than like 3 to 6 months because their really investing period for a fund is about 3 years. And so if you remove 3 to 6 months from that time period, then they're going to lower their returns by just not having enough time for things to grow, right? And so that's where the bucket of money is for us to draw on. If you raise money now and you can survive and make your way through the downturn, you will have less competition, you'll have more experience, you have the time to build. Now, the question is like, can you time that correctly? Can you raise the money now to actually get out in the market?
But what are you building? Because I'm always fascinated by the revenue streams here.
Yeah.
And obviously ad revenue, everyone knows.
Yeah.
But it's like, how sustainable is it to like, let's say D2C, sell merch, sell all like NFTs when we're in a recession, people don't have a lot of money? Like, how do you see the revenue streams correlating to venture capital when it comes to creators?
I think there's 2 things to consider. One is multiples and the other is actual revenue. So DTC makes a ton of revenue, but their profit margins are slim, and therefore their multiples are capped, right? Multiples are lower. And so the question is like, is that a real business that VC should be investing in? That's a real business, but like it's not VC returns.
Yeah.
if you're talking about pure play software like NFTs, creator economy, like tools for that ecosystem, you have super high margins. And so you can actually wait for the market to catch up with you, right? Because your cost basis is way less. Like I'm not manufacturing a shit ton of mattresses to store an inventory, right? I don't need that much capital. I can just focus on the software development, acquire users, and go back to like the basics of high margin software business.
So that's an interesting point. I know you're in like the Web3 space right now, very into DAOs,
very much,
crypto, etc. Do you see DAOs having a place when it comes to this whole concept of investing in creators?
Yeah. So if you think about DAOs, they're the community infrastructure block of Web3. So if you think about the internet moving forward and technology moving forward, how do you organize the people? It used to be that you had to do it in a Facebook, group, or you just had like a Slack channel or Discord. How do they actually take action? How do they make decisions? That's where DAOs come in. And so we can distribute tokens that allow us to vote on decisions. And that means that vote becomes binding, and we can all see that that's the decision that we made. So it allows us to disagree and commit. And so that's an important feature when you actually manage communities, is how do we actually come to a consensus on an action that we want to take? And the fact that the DAOs are being baked into protocols and other parts of Web3 tell me that this is a fundamental way that we will organize ourselves in the future.
So I do want to talk about Orange and Origami.
Yeah.
But from other companies that already exist, what are some real use cases you've seen of DAOs that properly kind of play into this creator economy?
Actually, can I jump directly to OrangeDAO? Sure. Yeah. So we have a program at OrangeDAO, which is called the Fellowship Program. And it is a precursor to a seed stage startup. So I have let's say I'm a founder, I'm pivoting, or I'm left my company. I'm looking for some idea. I need some time and money to like learn Web3 before I can actually pivot into it. The fellowship offers that. That program was voted on by our members and authorized by our members to actually go fund founders. So we actually just graduated a class of 10 fellows. I think one of them just got into YC. And so this is a way of funding higher risk proposition than what venture capitalists are willing to do, because a DAO is willing to invest into people and they have different expectations of return than venture capital.
What are the expectations of return?
Great question. I actually don't know. The proposal didn't say it. Right. So this is like the weird part of being a DAO.
This is the part of being in a DAO. And how many members?
There are 1,300 members in a DAO.
And this is the OrangeDAO.
So yeah.
And OrangeDAO, if I'm not mistaken, is a DAO for YC founders.
So of the 1,300 members, the vast majority, 90-some%, are YC founders.
Got it.
And then a few are like ex-YC staff and founders of YC-backed companies who didn't go through the program.
And you were a YC company before you started this?
Yeah, I'm a YC founder. I actually worked at YC prior to this.
Okay.
Prior to that.
Oh, you worked at YC?
Yeah, so I was on a moonshot project called New Cities when Sam was president.
Yeah. What was that?
It was to rethink how cities get built.
Oh?
Yeah, a little, just not ambitious at all, just a tiny little project.
And what came out of it?
Yeah, so...
wait, are you saying that's more ambitious than the cat meme? Because... impact. Because he changed like, imagine the world without memes, and then imagine the world without cities.
A world without memes is not one that
yeah, so there's a metaverse, right? So you don't need that, but you need memes in the metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, memes are the in-game currency of life.
Oh, that's a t-shirt.
No, but seriously, like, what was this concept of cities?
We have all cities are. I think it's hilarious that you guys took the sip at the same time. Cities are built around transportation infrastructure. They're usually like on coastlines, rivers, railroad like junctions and things like that. So we're like, okay, with drones, autonomous cars, what changes? Does it fundamentally change the way cities should get built? That was the original question. It's like, how do we build better cities that serve its inhabitants? And then it became a much narrower problem on, holy crap, we have a housing crisis in the Bay Area, and how do we build like urban apartment buildings better, faster, cheaper? So it became a startup called Social Construct, which unfortunately died with the pandemic, but I left YC as an employee and then joined or started my company and got funded and went through Y-Combinator, the program.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and you're a journalism major.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you do all this stuff? Yeah.
I think I've been talking to my therapist about this for real and as a joke. I like living in the frontier. Like life is more interesting when you realize like you only have one life to live. Like you kind of don't want it to be boring. I'm probably the flip side of that. I'm probably like way too ADHD and like trying new shit all the time. But it teaches you a lot. And like every time I do a company, I realize the lessons I'd learned from the previous ones always apply. And so like I'm just like rolling my skill set and experience forward.
Interesting.
I'm still stuck on this concept of new cities. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
yeah.
In your mind, what is an ideal city that solves this problem of drones and transportation? Are there any cities that exist that already do?
There isn't one. Right now we're at a stage where population is actually going to peak. Still, 50 to 75% of the population of the world still doesn't really live in like dense urban areas. If you think about the amount of carbon that's generated by having to move people around long distances, right, or if inefficient buildings, it's a huge percentage of the carbon that we produce. And so if you create dense, walkable cities with good public transportation infrastructure, you have an enormous impact on carbon emissions.
How would you grade San Francisco as a city?
From an infrastructure perspective, poor to really poor.
Oh, okay.
I mean, BART, Muni.
Yeah, except the rest of America is like almost
I was going to say,
way worse.
What's the scale?
Yeah. So if you think about it globally, like we're near the bottom in terms of like good public infrastructure.
Yeah.
If you think about the United States, we're near the top.
But what makes good public infrastructure? Is it cleaner? Is it better routes?
It's safer, reliable.
Okay.
The fact that you can't expect to get on a BART reliably is a huge problem for BART itself, right? Because fewer people use it. So you end up with this like, what do you call it? Self-reinforcing loop. Better services, increased ridership, which increase funding for better services, right? And we're going through the opposite problem right now because of the pandemic.
What do you think about the subway system in New York? Is that at the top or is that also near the bottom?
It's a great network. I don't know why it's so dirty.
Like the actual subways?
Yeah. I think generally the United States has a cultural violence problem, right? Like I think it's hard to trust people when you are new. And as a country, it's a very young country, right? And so if you go to older countries, so if you go to like, I just came back from Seoul, actually. It's like 4 a.m. Seoul time. I mean, it's their public transportation infrastructure is like insanely good. Like everything's orderly, but they've also had a culture where it's been the same homogenous group for like thousands of years. And so they trust each other. Here, the foundation of trust needs to get built. Right? The fact that we are all from different places, different ethnicities, different cultures that we came together, that's our strength. That really is our strength. Yet we need to gel together as a society to say we're going to look out for one another.
So you must hate Los Angeles.
I actually think Los Angeles is on a tear right now. They're actually doing pretty well.
How?
They're getting better and better. I think they've got a massive homeless problem like us. They're actually building more small communities at the little like neighborhoods. So it used to be LA was just sprawl.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then now LA is actually densifying into like clusters. And those clusters are getting better.
And then they don't have to travel out as much. I'm saying with the transit, right? It's
yeah. Well, LA's investing in their metro system. So their rail system's getting better. Like they had an amazing tram system prior to 1950s. And then they ripped them out.
Yeah.
If you like, I'm sure you guys read this, but like the fact that they took out hundreds of tram lines is like devastating. And that we're just like going back to that.
So then what's your thought on the Hyperloop?
If it happens, it'll be amazing. Right? Because if it happens, there's a long tradition of California just messing up high-speed transit. It's just like California's building high-speed rail. They're building like a little segment, I think it's like in the Central Valley somewhere, and it's costing like billions and billions of dollars. And the Hyperloop can be a solution that doesn't cost as much. That's the hope.
So if I like, okay, in some idealistic world, you were given $100 million to throw at a problem, right? You're told to build a city somewhere in the Bay Area, just so that, I mean, a lot of our audience is based in the Bay Area.
Let's say like a micro community, so even easier, right?
Yeah.
What's like, okay, maybe you need shops, you need houses. Like what things do you need to build a very like MVP of a community?
So first of all, I've learned that 100 million in terms of city building is like nothing. It's like mist. It's them a drop in the bucket. It's like humidity. But
well, yeah, we lowballed you first. We didn't. We need to see what. Yeah, it's like you need to prove to us.
I'm trying to highball you guys right now. It's like, give me a little more money here.
Okay, 100 billion.
You came back. We literally said, "How about this?" And he's like, "I can't do anything with that."
No, I can do stuff with it. I'm just saying, it's a negotiation.
Yeah,
we gotta work on the cap a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So let's start with 100 million. What would I do with 100 million? I would start looking at existing high density neighborhoods, and start to add transit to them.
Okay.
Yeah. So like Mission Bay.
Yeah.
It's too new to have any real character, but living there actually is pretty good because there's rail, it's by the water, it's actually relatively high density. Like it's an example of what will be a really great neighborhood in the future. Maybe not in our lifetime, but people are going to Mission Bay at some point. Like maybe our kids will go there and go, wow, look at this amazing old neighborhood. Right? They've got like shops and they've got people washing the streets and they've got public transit. Wow, it could be like this everywhere else. Things move really slowly in infrastructure, but there are examples like that around the United States. Some friends of mine, another YC company called Cul-de-sac, is building a carless community of all places in Arizona.
Wow.
I've seen.
Yeah. And it's really cool because it's like this like island of car-free areas. But if you've ever lived in a car-free neighborhood, you'll notice that it is much quieter, that you actually know your neighbors, that it's actually safer because there are more eyes looking at the street.
Is that a thing in like Europe or Asia?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Very much so.
Okay.
So what, do people use golf carts to get around?
They walk.
They walk, man.
Are you a fan of like the Bird and the Lime scooters
Yes.
in terms of infrastructure?
Yeah, because you have to fit all the gaps between walking and flying, right? The world's most efficient, safest infrastructure for transportation is flying. The world's most safest low-speed infrastructure is walking. And for every single like gap in between, we have to figure out how to actually fill that. And a car-free neighborhood doesn't just say we're going to get rid of cars. What it's saying is cars are not the right tool for all the stuff in between cars and walking. Let's figure out how to create infrastructure for all the stuff in between, including bikes and hoverboards and birds.
But that'll never happen because the auto industry would never let you do that here, right?
I'm an entrepreneur. I don't believe in never.
Yeah. How are you going to lobby them? I guess you got to do something.
So anytime an entrepreneur takes on a problem, I think you've got two options. One is full frontal assault, and the other is the workaround. Usually the workaround works way better, faster, cheaper than the full frontal assault. And so the question isn't how do I lobby against the auto industry? It's how do I get the other interested parties to support what I'm doing versus what the auto industry is doing.
Is that what you think? Like, which one do you think Uber did?
Uber totally took the hack, right? They didn't take on the taxi industry head on. They actually built a limo industry. Call taxis prior to Uber, right? Were considered limos. I remember actually like having a driver that I would call on a regular basis would take me to the airport. Like the guy knew my name. I'd be like,
so it wasn't a taxi?
It wasn't a taxi. It's like I'd have to like wait and call, like I'd like hail down a cab.
Yeah.
Right. So I was living in Seattle, and so it's not very dense. So like there's zero chance that I can hail down a cab when I need to go to the airport. So I'd like text this guy, be like, "Yo, Brian, pick me up. I'm usually going. Like this is my flight." I'm like, cool, I'll be there. That got replaced by Uber. Taxi didn't get replaced by Uber.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, Bird scooters kind of went the full, like the first version, right? Because they just put their scooters everywhere across SF. I think they got banned for a bit.
Full frontal assault.
Yeah.
Much more expensive.
Are they still around?
I think so. I mean, Lime's definitely taken over. Spin's taken over.
Yeah, so I think I saw Lime outside, yeah.
Because they raised so much money, right? All of them. Like hundreds of millions.
Yeah, all their valuations just went down too. So.
The pandemic killed most of it, right? But it didn't help that they did the full frontal assault and then San Francisco banned them.
Yeah. So if you're now to go, with all this experience you had from this first neighborhood type startup, if you were to start again, what would you do differently?
I have a lot of respect for all the hardware entrepreneurs out there, but I wouldn't do a hardware company, which is exactly what I didn't do, right? I started a crypto DAO software company. It's you don't realize how painful cut and paste is when you have to move like a ton of literal physical wood, right? You're like on your keyboard, you're like cut, paste, code. The equivalent in hardware is like get a forklift.
So have you okay, we talked a little bit before. You like to read.
Yeah.
Have you read Build? Tone, I think his name's Tony Fadell.
I think I've heard of this guy.
He was the iPhone.
Yeah, I haven't read his book.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things he talks about is, when people come up to him and they're like, "Oh, you're this hardware guy because you built like the iPhone," and and they come up to him with concepts for hardware startups, he usually says, why are you building a hardware startup? Can you make it software instead?
Yeah.
I guess you draw a lot of parallels to that.
I do. So Social Construct, the construction company, was actually both software and hardware. So the idea was, if you had a bunch of Lego blocks and your software could take any design and create like a 95% perfect fit using software, what would the hardware look like? And so they were supposed to work in tandem. So yeah, I think software makes hardware better. And so you have to think about both together, or just think about the question of what is the problem, and defining the problem correctly usually is the first step to being a good entrepreneur. Because if you don't identify that problem correctly, you're either going to spend too much money, or just wander around too long, or just not get product market fit.
What was the problem you were working towards when you started Origami?
For Origami. So Origami is the DAO operating system for the most scalable communities out there. The problem was that DAOs were really difficult to build and get off the ground. And so we're very much focused on the 0 to 1 launch part of what a DAO is. And so we realized that it wasn't just about the software. It was about the advice, the documentation, the legal framework, all the stuff that came before the software. The software ties everything together, right? But it wasn't about shipping a product. It was about, how do we solve this problem that our customers are having? Which is, they want to build a DAO. They know what a DAO is, but they don't know any of the 1,000 steps between, I haven't started one, to how do I get a community to actually start activating inside a DAO?
If I want to start a DAO tomorrow, let's say basic, it's been done a million times before, but it's for builders who are between the ages of 16 and 25.
Okay.
Based in San Francisco.
Okay.
That's all I have. Now, how do I go build a DAO from that?
All right. So the questions that we ask are, one, do you have a real business model? In other words, how does the DAO get value into its treasury? Because the governance token of a DAO controls how that treasury is spent. So without some value going into that treasury, there's no value to the DAO other than just a bunch of people hanging out on Discord.
Okay, that's actually really interesting. So now let's say I want to pivot the idea entirely. Now it's these 18 to 25-year-olds.
Good, he's learning fast.
Now these 18 to 25-year-olds are building a physical space in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So now there's a goal to work towards. There are, co-working membership opportunities. Like, there are ways to actually, as an event space, people could come and pay to host events. Now there's actual monetization.
Yep.
Now how do I go from 0 to 1?
Okay. So the first thing you have to do is you have to start building a community. Who are the real true believers? They're doing it again with the whole coffee drinking. This is awesome.
I was watching the first time you said it. I tried to not time it, and is that the second time we did that?
You know when you get an Uber and you lower the window just a little bit, and the driver will lower it, right? It's like, I don't know that they're doing it on purpose, but I'm just like, it's my little remote control. So
you're very perceptive, because I don't think anyone else is.
Never.
It is literally in unison with the same cups. How do people not notice this? Okay, so
well, you're an architect, so.
Okay. So
how is that relevant?
What? I don't know.
I'm a journalism
He's
major.
a journalism architect that somehow found Web3.
And made memes.
Yeah, and made memes, and is now like an expert in all these things.
Yeah. Well, I'm very wide, not very deep. Okay. What are we talking about?
We're talking about how can we build a DAO.
Right. How can we build a DAO? My actual full-time job. All right, so you start building a community. You want to find your tribe. So the way I describe a DAO is that it's an economic tribe. So you can take an existing network of people who are loosely affiliated, like an alumni group, let's say the Stanford alumni, and you can say, hey, you know how we used to pass along leads or sales or help one another?
Yeah. We
can actually create a community that captures that economic value. So I would start out with, who are the people I want in my economic tribe? Who are the core members who are going to help me actually govern and build and recruit more people for it?
Okay.
So like a multi-level marketing scheme? That's what you just said.
Right. I mean, every community requires, recruiting.
He literally just did he's like, now identify, these guys. And then
so the difference, I want to point out the difference, is that you're not committing to giving each other money. You're giving the community a control over its treasury. And so it's more like a collective, a cooperative. Right?
Okay. Like a co-op.
Yeah.
Like a co-op, living
Very
in a
much
co-op.
so.
Okay.
So to keep the story going, now I found some guys off Twitter, 10, 20,000 followers. They have a decent audience.
Yeah.
They kind of know what they're doing. Now what's next? I have this community.
Yeah. And then you have a business model around how you're going to make money. Okay. Now you need to create an incentive system. Why do I, as a member, care about the tokens in the DAO? Or why do I care about the services that are being provided in the DAO? What are you going to give me for my time and my work? Right? So is it more governance tokens because I want a bigger say in how the treasury gets spent? Or is it actual like a security like instrument so that I can actually earn a return? And so that is the incentive model that you have to design, right? So somebody's going to manage, let's say, the space that you're going to rent out. What does that person get? Are they going to get paid in dollars? Do you have enough like stable coins to actually pay that person? So you're going to start designing that economic structure of it. And
do DAOs, obviously, they don't raise money through the traditional VC routes. A lot of them do crowdfunding, through Mirror. Right?
Some do actually. A lot. Yeah. So we're seeing. So Origami actually just announced a program where we're providing $20,000 in seed funding through OrangeDAO, so the DAOs can actually get off the ground. So the very difficult part is like a DAO doesn't really have like a investable entity the way startups do.
Right.
And so we're helping guide people through that process.
What is that process? Because you can't use Stripe Atlas.
Yeah. So you want to set up an entity like an LLC or a cooperative or a nonprofit foundation or some body that can actually accept those funds and issue tokens in exchange. Right. So now that you have an entity like an LLC, then the LLC can open a bank account.
Oh, gotcha.
Then you can use Stripe Atlas. So a lot of DAOs that we work with actually are not raising money directly from its members, right? It's got a revenue model and it's asking people for sweat equity, right? Or some kind of like pitching in so they can actually earn a bigger share of the tokens.
Is that the best way to distribute like equity in the DAO?
Yeah, so it's not the same thing as equity, right? Because these are not securities, or some are, some DAOs are, but how do you reward people, right? Rewards can come in terms of financial upside, social upside, as well as control. And so what DAOs are starting out with is social upside and control until the securities law gets clearer.
And there have been like horror stories, right, of just foul play in this industry. How do you any stories that stick out?
Which one are you talking about? There's so many to choose from.
I mean, just DAOs.
Yeah.
Like, is there a lot of DAO ones too that are bad? So
there are a couple of DAO issues that we've seen crop up. One is mob-like behavior. So, I won't mention names, but a bunch of DAOs have done deals with outside partners and then decided that they didn't like the deal anymore and cancel it. Right? They voted to basically renege on the deal, and that's not cool. That's not going to build a reputation for you.
Yeah.
And so there's that type of bad behavior. And then the other type of risk, we saw a regulatory ruling against the DAO saying that they were illegally trading futures and options on a platform. These are the early stage pains of how DAOs are going to get built. I think they made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so our goal at Origami is to help guide people so that they don't make these mistakes. So if you're going to end up accidentally issuing a security, you should make sure that you talk to a lawyer beforehand before you do that. If you're clearly not issuing a security, then you don't have to do all this other crap that other people do to make them more efficient. And so our advice is to help them kind of separate the two and say, hey, you're going down a path that's actually high risk. Right? Or you're going down a path that's actually way lower risk, or you can actually design the token in a way that is not a security. And this is how you avoid it. People just lack the context there and also the confidence because lawyers are always going to tell you that there's some risk.
Do you also see like this association with like DAOs and crypto and just Bitcoin and the uncertainty? Like, do you see that as a negative or more of like, well, we have to keep educating so it doesn't just get lumped in?
Yeah, so I was actually really afraid of that like several months ago when like the first part of the crypto crash happened.
Yeah.
It turns out that when people think about DAOs, they really think about community-based control. And crypto just happens to be the technology that we use to enable that. And so the number of DAOs that we're working with actually has continued to go up and to the right because people are really concentrating on the community factor and how do we actually co-own something or co-control something together. I also think that because we've been kind of pounding the table on compliance and making sure that like people don't violate the law accidentally, that's helped us a lot. But that's where the real value is once you have a network and you have network effects for a community of people, now you can do things that are much, much greater than just a small group, right? So OrangeDAO, one of our values to our portfolio companies is that we can help validate your idea faster because there's all these entrepreneurs who've been around the block and we can give you feedback and they're probably going to be doing it in a way that's much more critical, that's looking at the product in an entrepreneurial way versus just a customer.
So if you were to now start like a DAO for consulting, so to speak?
They exist, by the way.
Actually?
Yeah. So there's a handful of DAOs. They're usually categorized as like research DAOs. And what they do is they combine like a group of people together and say, we're going to collectively create a research report based on demand, and we will sell them, and we will do consulting, and that money will be split between the consultant and DAO's treasury.
And then apart from this kind of, I don't know, like this benefit of large numbers of people being part of a DAO, what are the other benefits as opposed to like, okay, now I have this like group, again, to our previous example, I have this group of smart people on Twitter.
Yeah.
Why should I make a DAO instead of just incorporating and giving everyone equity?
What do they do to earn that equity? And why are you the person to decide?
For the sake of this example.
Well, so that's the thing, right? This is where the rubber meets the road. So there's theoretically possible organizations, and then there are the realities. If we're in a group of researchers and we're going to publish a bunch of papers around whatever, I want to know that the compensation is fair. So there's a process to deciding how that should work. Is it 80-20? Do I get 80% of the money and the DAO gets 20%? Like, who gets to decide that? It used to be everything was centralized top down. Yeah. Somebody who is whoever, well, for whatever reason at the top decided that that's the way things going to be. In a DAO, we can all vote. We can say for the next season, any report, any dollar we generate, 80% will, 60% will go to the person and 40% will go to the DAO. And it's because we all voted and we're the worker ants of the community. There's a moral authority to that decision making. I might have voted for a different number, but you know what? We do this as a community together. So I'll do the 60-40 split.
Gotcha. And then when it comes to people who are establishing DAOs, sometimes you'll see instances where the founding team, so to speak, or like the early members of the DAO have a lot more token equity.
Yep.
And so their vote means a lot more than an average member of the community or someone who joins later.
Yeah.
What are ways to counteract that?
So I want to clarify one thing. It's not equity per se. Usually they're not equity because they're not a shareholding structure,
right,
but just token holdings in general,
gotcha,
right? I think inequality is just a feature of the system. The question is, how do you mitigate the negative impacts of inequality? If you're the founders of a DAO and you put in sweat equity early, you're going to get more tokens because that's the nature of how starting things and taking risk works. Risk reward happens with uncertainty and time. And so there's nothing wrong with that. OrangeDAO, for example, has adopted quadratic voting. In other words, every subsequent token that a person holds will have lower impact on voting on a proposal than somebody would like fewer number of tokens. In other words, if you're a whale, your votes count less than 1-to-1. Yeah. So these are questions about mitigating the downside impact of inequality. It is not about just redistribution of tokens or flattening who owns what. If you think about how nature has like these design patterns over and over again, and this goes back to my favorite book you're going to ask me later about, I'm just reading your mind. Power laws exist over and over again, right? No matter what you do, power laws where the top 1% has an outsized share of an ecosystem reoccurs. And nature just has like baked it into statistical distribution. So fighting that is going to be very ineffective. Right? So this is, don't do frontal assaults. What's the workaround, right? Quadratic voting.
Interesting. So before we get to your favorite book, I want to switch over into, I think, a more personal line of questioning.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know what it was like growing up in an immigrant household for you to go on to do the things that you've done, because it's very non-traditional.
Yeah. Unlike most Asian families, my parents didn't actually like pressure me to be a doctor or an engineer. Maybe they should have.
I was going to ask, yeah. Like, how are you? So you were just interested in just like, I guess, media writing?
I was a nerd. Let's be honest. Right? I moved around schools a lot. So like, I would make friends, and like a year later, I would have to switch schools. And so that was like, we weren't like a military family or anything. It just so happened that was how I grew up. So like, I'm an introvert, and from this interview, you probably would never get that sense. It is a severe adaptation for survival. If you make new friends every year, you figure out how to actually like be an extrovert, at least, be enough.
Are you only child?
I'm an only child.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good pickup. So yeah. So I would just have a lot of different interests. Like I would be exposed to lots of different stuff. And so that's where like being a nerd, like computers and media kind of came together. Like I was I'm old enough where I was like born into like the age of like digital publishing. So if any boomers out there can recognize this, Quark Express, does that ring any bells? Okay. Anyway, it's a desktop publishing tool. And I was really good at it. And so that like got me into media and like publishing. Like Adobe PageMaker, does that ring a bell? God,
that I know. Yeah.
Okay.
I know Adobe PageMaker.
Feel less bad.
Yeah. He's
Adobe?
That I know.
Okay, good.
Well, you barely know Facebook.
It's true.
That's true.
No, it's true. I've had an account, but I haven't opened it in like.
If I was a doctor, I would like dissect your brain right now.
Yeah.
How does it work?
Is that interesting? Not knowing what Facebook?
No, I mean every generation of technology is just going to change, right? Yeah, I think it's a good thing. If everybody had to know old technology, we wouldn't be able to get new users and have a revolution in technology every like 10 years.
It's true. It's true. And then going back to it, you got into digital publishing.
Yeah. And so that's what got me really interested in media. I was actually really into visual design. Like, of course I can read, write, and edit stuff, but like that's like English is not my first language. And so that wasn't the interest for me. It was the visual part. It was the universal side of communication. Right. And so like the precursor to like UX design, like that's what I was into.
And then you were like, instead of words and languages, cat memes can translate. How did you actually come up? Like, why the cat?
Yeah, so I didn't come up with that. So I ran like a personal blog about having a dog. Like literally zero traffic. It's like me and my wife. Those only
you just
two
had
people.
A dog.
We had a dog, and we're like, I'm bored. I'm gonna like make sure I do something. Like I want to make sure I output stuff that will actually get somewhere.
Okay.
And so I was like literally reviewing dog toys. How bad of a business is that?
Wait, you were reviewing them?
I was personally reviewing.
Wait, from the dog's point of view?
How would you?
Was the dog reviewing?
Who's reviewing? Yeah. Because you need to translate because the dog can't actually type.
I mean, he wishes he had thumbs. Right. I can't even remember.
How would you review the dog toys?
You can bite into them. You know, you can eat dog food, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. He's like, oh,
look, are you committed to your craft or what?
You're not even answering the question.
I don't remember.
I was like, how can you review
this? It's irrelevant. Like, no one ever saw it. It's like a tree falls into the forest. Who gives a, So I was doing this, and there was a pet food recall. Oh, thank God I didn't eat those. So now you know the answer. Now you know. I didn't eat the dog food.
This sounds so scary. I can't wait till like you. Well, you've explained this to other people, right?
Actually, no one's asked me this question.
No.
In the decades I've actually been in business, no one has asked me if I personally review them or if my dog.
You have some really smart people interviewing you, though.
Yeah. I mean,
and then there's us.
The due diligence here is respect, man. Like you're going deep. So
I'm fast. I love dogs and animals.
Yeah,
and it's like I consider you the person who started memes about this.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm like anything.
This is like ahead. This is an entrepreneur journey.
Please go ahead. Just get us back.
I give up.
Yeah.
Where's the trail? All right, let's get back on it. So there was a pet food recall, and a bunch of dogs died, and it was like big news. And it was a white label food manufacturer. In other words, they made food for other companies. But what happened was that because there was this like massive negative PR, they took down their homepage.
Okay.
And I'm like, you take down your homepage? Ha! This is piece of cake. I'm going to look at the cached versions of all of your links so I can figure out where your documents are.
Oh.
And of course they didn't take down the documents. They just took out, default.html. And so I'm like, oh, there's actually a PDF of all the companies that they worked with. And I published it on my personal pet dog review product blog.
Then you got the company
because I was alive because I didn't eat the dog food.
Yeah.
Literally. So because they're killing dogs. And then it got picked up by all the press.
Oh.
It also got picked up by this guy in Hawaii named Eric Nakagawa. He was the guy who started I Can Ask Cheeseburger with his girlfriend.
Okay.
He hot linked an image. In other words, he served an image off of my server, off of his page. So if you look at my server logs, it was just like all these calls from his domain. I'm like, motherfucker. So I emailed him like, yo, you got to stop this. Like, you're literally like blowing up my server bill.
Yeah.
Like, don't be a dick. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I was just in a hurry. I'll put it on my site. And I was like, I just talked to a guy who had like a million times more traffic than I do. Maybe I shouldn't tell him to fuck off. Maybe I should actually like ask him if he needs any help. Mm. That was it. That's how the whole thing got started. And then I ended up buying the site from him with a bunch of investors. Because I get access to his Google Analytics. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's like printing traffic.
But he didn't know what to do with it? Like,
yeah, he's like, understand. He hit lightning in a bottle. He's a smart guy. He works at Cello now. And we've been friends for a long time. And at the time, it was like overwhelming. It was like, dude, this is like way too much. I need help. So I was helping him out, all that stuff.
So what are you saying to investors in a room about buying a meme site?
Yeah.
It was?
Yeah. So most investors do not understand the new thing that you're doing, right? Because most investors are generalists. Like they know a little bit about the world and they're trying to figure out if home shopping is going to be a thing, if, you know, DTC mattresses are going to think. They're not experts in any of this, right? And if you ask the expert, they will tell you a million ways why it wouldn't work. And so the thing to focus on isn't the crazy part.
Yeah.
It's the, look, I understand that you don't understand what these captions of cat pictures are, but look at the traffic.
Yeah. Okay.
Traffic is a thing they understand. You can monetize the traffic. So let's go buy it based on the traffic.
What about brands though? Because I come from traditional media and advertising, and they're always worried about safety and, oh, I don't want to put this there and this can potentially happen as a scandal. Like, how are those early conversations?
It was 100 times worse back then.
Yeah.
Because no one knew what a you know, user-generated content thing was. And so they were like, what if we don't like the content that's next to it and people made this and you can't control the people who make it. I'm like, but I can control what gets posted.
Yeah.
Right. And so you, again, go back to the thing they know. What's the analogy? Right. And this is just editorially curated list of humor pieces of content. And you are next to something that a human being that works for us has reviewed.
Okay.
What do you think about decentralized social platforms where it's like no one has editorial?
Yeah. I looked at a couple of designs. I was working on some of the designs for this earlier on. I was trying to figure out like what would a meme engine for like, you know, Web3 look like. And you have to separate the social media infrastructure into a few pieces. One is filtering, right? So that's the part that people are worried about. You can't stop anyone from posting anything. Right. Even today, you can't stop anyone from posting anything to Twitter. It's that Twitter like fills in this black box between I posted something that shouldn't be up there to I'm seeing something. And so what you can control is the part that's filtering. And so if you are doing filtering today on Web3, you can actually use tribal systems like DAOs to create filters. Right. So if a DAO, so let's say there's a publisher DAO. And a bunch of us writers or content creators decided to join this DAO, and we're going to promote and help edit the pieces of content that we all create. So you created this podcast, you're going to post an episode. Let's say something happens on it and the community decides that they don't like what's being said. They can't censor you. Again, it's the blockchain. Anybody can post anything. You can still do that anyway. What they can say is, we disavow this piece of content. We will now downrank it in our algorithm. The tribe has spoken. Oh, did I just make a Survivor reference? Okay. Anyway, so you're kicked off the island. You're not a part of this DAO anymore because they're like, we don't believe in your views. You can join a different DAO.
Oh, but I thought you just meant they suppressed that specific piece of content.
They can't suppress the content. They can say,
kick you out.
They can kick you out. Or they can say, we are actually going to delist this from our recommended filter. So the filtering happens at the community level. This runs a high risk of filter bubbles. Yeah. In other words, like people live in echo chambers, but it is a viable method of curating content.
Would you do this in the future at some point because you have such a big content background? Would you get into this?
I'm kind of busy right now.
He kind of has like 6 other things.
Well, I know. I'm saying
I've got my McDonald's job. I've been interviewing at Wendy's because the market crashed.
Bro, he's here because he didn't eat the dog food. I don't know how. I don't know how.
I save my time for weird stuff. I am very interested in how this plays out.
Yeah.
So you see like Farcaster and Mastodon and other groups doing this. I don't know where it's all headed, but these are like, if I think about Web3 and the building blocks of DAOs, community vote, decentralized publishing, these are how I would assemble the building blocks together to build the new social web.
Yeah, because we're super interested in the future of content. and just where this is going, especially for Gen Z. Right. So we're like, this system makes sense, but it seems it's
I see you like you got crazy eyes right now. You're
very
just like,
early.
Ben, this makes sense.
Well, I have another crazy analogy. It's not even crazy, but I have another perspective I want to get you on, but I want to make sure you.
Can we turn off
this
headphones?
Cutting you off.
No.
No, I thought you didn't want to hear it.
No.
Okay.
It's not a 4-year-old.
I'm actually 14.
You know, it'd be cool. I want to get his dog, who does the blogging, on the podcast
he's our next
to
guest.
get how it's like, hey, he wrote all this stuff about the toys. How was it really? Like, did you actually like this toy?
How was it inventing memes, Mr. Dog?
It's like GPT-3 dog to English.
But are you a sports guy at all?
That's happening soon.
Really?
Oh, is
a friend of mine actually in OrangeDAO is working on a AI-based dog translator.
Whoa.
Can
we invest?
Let's ask him.
Ooh.
You should have him on next.
Yeah.
We might have to.
Yeah.
Him and a dog, or just him?
You should have him speak dog and translate live.
What does that mean?
I don't even know.
You said speak dog?
I'm just going to like throw in a bunch of words like MLAI.
Blockchain. Okay,
I'm blockchain. Yeah.
sold.
No, it's
You're fascinating dude, man. You speak in like haikus almost.
I speak in sound bites.
You do. They're easily digestible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're like, it's like we're in your head when you speak, but you're not acknowledging that at all. So you're.
Okay, I don't understand that, but to be honest,
okay. Back to real topic. Are you a sports guy?
Used to be.
Okay.
I had a moral objection to professional sports, but we won't get into that. That's another fast
college.
story.
Any specific?
I mean, I went to Northwestern, so we had 50 years of pain.
Okay, Northwestern. I can't do much at Northwestern, but it's okay. Are you
how do you kick a man who's down? Sort of. I went to high school in Sacramento.
Okay.
Which high school?
Okay.
Oh, Cordova.
My roommates all went to high school in Sacramento.
I'm sorry.
Why does everyone say that?
Have you been there?
No.
Okay, it's really nice now.
They got Leatherby's.
What is that? Is that a restaurant?
It's just amazing.
It's
ice cream.
It's an ice cream place. Yeah.
They have an ice cream. That's how you.
Now it's called Cowtown. Like the insult was like you'd ring cowbells when you come from Sacramento.
Oh, so like Napa's here, they have Cowtown.
Wait, what?
Like Napa Valley to San Francisco, and then you have
imagine Napa Valley without the nice wineries.
But it's like ice cream instead.
Yeah. And Walmarts and sweatpants. At least that was the reputation when I grew up. But now it's gotten a lot better. I'm gonna get a lot of hate mail. Well, you're gonna get a lot of hate mail for me.
We love Sacramento.
We love Sacramento.
Woo.
But can you own a sports team through
yes.
DAO?
Yeah, so there's actually several DAOs.
And what's the restriction on amount of like when does this get too big? So it's like you said, you have 1,300 members. Is $1 million too much? Is $500,000 too much, or does it even matter?
It's a great question. So anytime you design a system, if you have a order of magnitude increase in number of users, it breaks a whole bunch of systems.
Mm.
Okay, so this is actually very true for startups. If you start a company and you have 25 employees, the moment you get to 50, like half your stuff is broken, right? Like communications doesn't work, like your HR doesn't work. The same thing is going to work for a DAO, except DAOs scale much faster.
Yeah,
right. And so we have to build the technology, and we have to build the social norms so that people can behave in a DAO in a constructive manner.
Mm.
If you threw in 1 million people into a DAO today, it would be an absolute clusterfuck. Right?
Yeah.
Like Constitution DAO, it was actually a great project, but the number of people that owned the Constitution DAO tokens was insane, right? Because it was such a crowdfunded system.
Yeah.
They didn't have the infrastructure to support them. And then the project failed, and then token prices spiked. Like, how does that happen? Like, what the heck? No sane individual will look at it and go, well, that was the right thing to do, right? Like, the right thing happened.
Yeah.
It was no fault of the organizers, but again, we as a community and society don't know how to work within DAOs yet. We're still learning.
Mm. But it sounds like you've thought of it. When you said immediately, when I said sports, you said yes.
There. I would say there are half a dozen DAOs that I know of that are working on buying teams.
With how many? Any specifics on?
Well, I can't mention the targets because then the
not in terms of teams, but in terms of how it would work, because it would clearly not be as in everyone gets an equal share of the vote.
Right. So I don't want to put anybody to sleep because it gets really complicated into like the details of how they work. Yeah. But generally speaking, there's a company that's raising money from like professional investors to buy the team.
Okay.
And then there's a community of people whose job is to support that effort. And that community gets a piece of the action. But that
like
community
a token, so they get the token.
The token's like the control over the piece of the action. The piece of the action goes into the DAO, and the tokens govern that DAO.
Got it.
Right. So let's say somebody ended up buying the Giants.
Yeah.
And the Giants, let's say, made a profit, and the DAO got half the profits.
Okay.
Now, if you are a ticket holder to the Giants, you may actually get a profit rebate just by being a ticket holder.
Just by being,
Right. So that's like the mechanism. Like somebody else owns the team, right? And maybe the DAO has invested in the same structure.
Yeah.
But the question is, what do you do with a large community of people that exist today that you can actually benefit the group more so than what's happening in traditional finance, which is the owners get everything. If you think about sports, the fans are the value.
Yeah.
Right? The fans drive the ticket sales, the advertising eyeballs.
I spend so much money and I get no say in the personnel decisions. I get no say in things I probably know better than the guys doing it. I'll say it. I probably spend more time than most GMs looking at my own team.
So this is where you start to leverage the community, the power of community. And if you think about how that would work, is once the value gets created and is given to the community for control, why the heck would you go back to the older model of giving money and value away to somebody else? That's the virality of DAOs. Like once you realize that the community can actually capture value where there was none before, you're like, well, that seems unfair. The previous system is all of a sudden not fair.
Okay. So you do see this being viable in the future?
Oh, yeah. We're working with actually a group right now that is doing that. They're going to create a DAO. They're going to raise money to actually go buy one or more sports clubs, and it's going to be an entire formula.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I missed out the part where you explained this, but assuming it goes through and now there's this group of people that own let's just say the Jets, right?
Yeah.
How do you know that these people know what's best for the Jets? Or like, what if they're just some guy that has no idea about sports, but he has the money to be one of the bigger contributors?
Yeah. So this is where professional management comes in. So the DAO is not a direct democracy. Some DAOs are when it's a small number of people. But once you get more than 100 people, direct democracies don't work. Like you're not going to have a vote on like which brand of hot dog to serve at the game, right?
Yeah.
It's just like stupid, right? So how do you actually give the right to control something to the right people who know what to do? And how do you like make sure that they're doing their job?
Yeah.
So the right to manage the team is going to be assigned to a company, right, that hires a general manager and hires the back office.
Gotcha.
And that's how I assume OrangeDAO works. You have to approve someone to come in, like you guys do an evaluation process.
Well, the membership qualification for OrangeDAO is former YC or founders of YC-backed companies and staff.
Yeah.
So there's that part.
But that's so it's already
defined.
It's already defined.
That's right.
But we can do that back to your thing. In terms of the sports thing, maybe it's just season ticket holders, maybe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's some sort of pre-screening, right?
What economic activity are you doing that's going to qualify you for membership in the DAO?
And it has to be economic.
It doesn't have to be, but
that's just the easiest way of doing this. Okay.
Yeah, because like you're like unionizing your like fan base.
Oh, that's a good idea. I wish I wanted to ask what team, because there's one up for sale in the NBA, which I am a fan of, and I'm probably giving this away, but you raise your eyebrows.
I mean, there's so many teams out there. Like sports is a passion-driven business.
Yeah.
And if you can build a global sports franchise, like how would it work?
I'll sell all my sports cards right now and just give you the money. Can you just give me a stake in
He has a lot of sports cards.
I will connect you to the people who are doing this, and they would probably love to hear from you.
I'm so glad you need the dog food.
Me too.
Everything comes back to the dog food.
Me too. Yeah, the euphemism, like eat your own dog food.
I did not know that one.
Never heard that.
Okay.
Wait, just eat your own dog food?
So when you're building product, the idea is eat your own dog food means whatever you produce, you got to use it. But I got to where I am by not eating my dog food. There's always a counterpoint.
So what's the best advice you've ever received relating to specifically? I think it'd be interesting to hear creative economy.
This is it's also very apt for the time right now. Things are never as bad as people make it sound, and you're never as good as you think you are.
Interesting. And then what's the worst advice you've ever received?
Oof, the worst advice. There's so many. How many to choose from? This time it'll be different.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
There's like 0.001% chance it is different. and the irony is like that's the entrepreneur's job. But as an investor, this time it's different is probably not to your best interest.
Do you also see that as a problem in founders? If the founder is like, oh, this is like a failing, industry or value prop, I'm going to be the one that changes it. Is that like a red flag?
No. That's going to that's going to make me ask a whole bunch of more questions. Why? Okay. Why do you believe that it's going to be different this time? What is fundamentally changed in the world that says it'll work? Because it does work. Like people have tried to disrupt taxis, and it turns out that didn't work, but Uber did by going after limos. Right? So it does work. So the question is like, what's the path? And if you can't justify that, if you can't communicate that clearly, you're not getting a check from us.
I think going back on that question, any specific traits that you've seen? I mean, I'm sure you've talked to hundreds of founders at this point that you can be like, well, these 2 or 3 qualities is even if you have to pivot, even if the business is not working, like you're going to be a good founder and you're going to figure something out.
Being a founder, the second time around is always easier than the first time around. Like you just kind of like know what's important. There's a saying that first-time founders work on product, second-time founders work on distribution.
Interesting.
This is probably like very inside baseball for startups, but like, so that tells you that once you've been around the block and you know how businesses work, you start to, it's not that the fundamentals are different, you kind of reprioritize them. Yeah.
What's the best book you've ever read?
What's the best book you've ever read?
Finally, the question
yes,
comes
yes. It's a book called Deep Simplicity. I think the writer's last name is Gibson, and he's like a science writer. And it really talks about how there are patterns in nature that occur over and over again, right? So here's an example. If you look at the floor of a rainforest, like the Amazon jungle, at the very like fungus, like down at like the 1-inch level, it resembles the forest itself, right? They look like a tiny little forest because of these mushrooms and things like that.
Yeah.
The power law or the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, these heuristics, these shortcuts in design or these simplified designs occur over and over again. And if you start to identify them in your work or in your life, you're like, oh, this system is unlikely to end up in 80-20 or 50-50. This system is much more likely to end up in a power law. Then your job is to find like just the head of that power law to find the best companies in that group. Venture works in a power law system, right? And so that's different than 80-20. So that changes, like you can literally see generally what systems you should go after, and you're designing something a little bit different because these heuristics tell you that they operate differently.
Yeah.
Have you used that in the way you design your life or like your day-to-day?
There's a lot of different system designs there. Mostly professionally. I did create, so one of the people that I really like reading is Charlie Munger, the other half of Berkshire Hathaway, and he's got a bunch of essays and speeches that you can read. And he talks about this a lot, which is, he called it a mental lattice. And the idea is that you take all these different concepts, things like human biases, and you can cross-reference them. And so when you're talking to someone and you know that they have a vested interest in something that they're selling, right? There are these biases involved. And so you should know which ones they are so you can counteract them or at least acknowledge that they exist. And there's like only about 100 of these systems that you really need to know. So I actually went and defined all 100 systems that I want to learn and memorize. And I created a little shortcut. Wow. I spent like a year doing that.
It's funny because the video of Charlie Munger and Buffett clowning Bitcoin is like,
oh my God,
surfacing now just after FTX, and they have like 2 minutes on what their thoughts on Bitcoin just being. They didn't refer to it as a Ponzi scheme, but he said more in terms of like it's dangerous when people are getting into it just to get rich quick.
Yes.
Versus what they do, and it's like and then Munger is like, oh, that's a nice way of putting it. Like my thoughts are way worse than Warren's.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to agree with them 100%. Like I've used the technology, whereas I don't think they really have used the technology. They're looking from the outside in. It's like, I'm never going to trust anybody in blockchain who's never like, screwed up a transaction.
But that's the problem, right? Like people are associating this with the tech. Like no one's separated it yet from the media. So it's like, do you see this as like, it's just setting the industry back? So
think about it from their perspective. The only thing that they care about is being an investor. They're the greatest investors on earth.
Yeah. And
so from them, price versus value matters. They're value investors. And so everything that they look at comes from the lens of, is this a good investment? When they're talking about Bitcoin, they're saying, I don't understand the inherent value in the blockchain. And to their credit, there really isn't one until people start to build on it. That's why I'm like, I'm like probably more of an ETH maxi than I'm a...
I was going to say, is that an Ethereum thing more?
Bitcoin isn't the greatest.
Bitcoin, there's a bunch of people working on it. I know them, and they're going to get there. I think it's a race to valuable blockchains. And so when I've used our technology and I understand the platform, that's what gets me excited. I get excited by the fact that my friends who are amazing builders are like, holy crap, this is the greatest thing since, the internet itself.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And we all have that like gut reaction. And we've been around the block for Web 1, 2, and now 3.
Yeah.
And so we feel that our gut instinct is right. The investor perspective is what it is.
So we do this thing kind of at the end of every podcast where we go through your Twitter.
Oh, God.
I got it.
Please avoid tweets from the hours of 8 p.m.
No, I got a few interesting ones. And are you aware of Costco just in general?
I've been to Costco.
Costco? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, grew up going to Costco.
Well, you tweeted this. I don't know why you're asking.
Oh, shit. All right.
Yeah. Well, what you tweeted, this is what you tweeted. You tweeted, can we put whoever is in charge of the Costco hot dog combo in charge of stable coins? I think you'd find this funny too, being in the industry. Yeah. But this is not even the best part. So the guy comments under, this was like the top comment, which you might have not even read. He says Luna equals Costco membership, Terra equals Costco rotisserie chicken, and Anchor equals Costco savings. Your guys' thoughts?
Hindsight is 2020. That is not true. That we have found out. You cannot algorithmically generate chickens to put it in a rotisserie and sell it for like whatever it is they're selling at Costco, or hot dogs. Well, maybe you can algorithmically generate hot dogs. No, I'm kidding. Sausage. You don't want to know how the sausage is made.
I get that one.
Thank you.
Okay, I got that one.
Wow, we're ending on a high note right now. I feel really great about my exit here. So maybe you can algorithmically generate crap and put it in a tube and sell it to people.
I mean, rotisserie chicken is like the flagship, right? Costco.
Yeah, but the hot dogs, like the fact that it's $1.50.
Yeah, you're
that's like a miracle. Yeah, and they're telling us that it's not a loss leader. They don't lose money on it. How do you make money?
They lose money on the chicken. That I know.
Oh, okay.
For a fact. Like,
I'm gonna go buy more chicken. I'm gonna arb that chicken.
No. If you go in, right?
Yeah.
Get the chicken and walk out, you're killing them.
Yeah.
Like you're EV, you're positive EV every single time.
Oh my God. I need to set up a truck.
Who can do that? Who can do that?
I'm going to go buy the chickens and sell it in a truck right outside of Costco. I'm going to arb the chicken.
Handedly destabilize.
You're selling it for cheaper? What do you mean?
No, for more. I'm going to reduce.
Oh, so you're taking all the supply. You're saying you buy all the chickens in the morning.
Oh, I'll have all the chickens.
And then just stand outside and sell the chickens?
I think you can just do it right at like rush hour.
Yeah.
Time-based chicken value has different values.
You know what's funny though? You're killing their business model because they want you to walk through all the shit to get the chicken. So
I'm providing convenience.
But you're outside. You're sinking Costco.
$5 more. You don't have to go through Costco.
You don't have to go through Costco.
You don't need a Costco membership to get Costco.
It's probably too much of an arb. That's not going to work. But that's what we do, right? We figure out how to make things more easier and more convenient to people.
Yeah.
And, that's how you make money.
Okay, I'll get to like more of a real one. It's okay to pay 6 figures for a JPEG and for it to be worth nothing more than a JPEG. # normalized digital assets.
Yes. Absolutely.
You still feel that way?
Yes.
And you have basic, you have early like, you have apes.
I have an ape. Yeah, I've got a few doodles. I've got a bunch of
Do you like the communities?
You got a Ute?
I'm not very involved in those communities. But I like the fact that there is one that I can join it. Like it's optionality for me.
And do you like the IRL element? Because I know they did in New York, the Bay City, they had like the yachts. I'm sorry, basically Bored Ape Yacht Club. They had like parties.
Yeah.
They had members. I think like Lil Baby has one and Post Malone has one, but they performed. Like, is that the future? Is that the real value in these things?
I don't think so.
No.
Digital value tends to be digital, right? So the physical interaction stuff I think is like cherry on the ice cream cake, whatever the saying is. Like it's the whipped cream plus the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Right. The real value of this is actually status or access provided by those JPEGs.
But that's part of the status. Right? No? The access to events?
Maybe. So the access to events, or access to other digital spaces, or access to like future drops, future merchandise, exclusivity.
Or even also people knowing that you have access to those things. Like when you look at it from, let's say Web 2, like Instagram, having a blue check was the biggest flex ever. People would fake their pictures in front of a private jet.
Right.
Blue checks are no longer flex. But
so you're saying like owning the...
No, what I'm saying is like our entire lives really quickly shifted over to like your status is determined by what you put on the internet. And now it makes sense that, you know, this next evolution is a verifiable way to prove that your status is what you say it is.
So you know the concept of a Veblen good?
No.
Veblin. It is one in which most economic systems where if you produce a good and you produce lots of it, the price will go down, right? A Veblen good is one in which the price of the goods go up because it's a luxury good that describes status.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't match supply and demand.
Would that be like a watch, like a nice watch?
Yeah. Like a Rolex or, you know, Louis Vuitton. Like there's these luxury goods that are Veblen goods where it's not, it literally the price indicates the exclusivity.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of JPEGs that are Veblen goods, right? That's why the whole 10,000, you know, profile photo thing exists to make that an exclusive thing.
And then it makes sense because now it's verifiable. You can buy fake Yeezys. And sure, you could put a fake picture of an ape as your profile picture, but people will know it's not yours if they just, what is it?
And you can license these now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like they have,
But it's like that's like part of the narrative, and it'd be interesting. And like somebody will make some money from licensing them, but 10,000 PFPs means that there aren't going to be 10,000 people that make money off of licensing a Bored Ape. It's going to be the fact that somebody got some media content out there, and that's going to appreciate the value of all of the collection because now you own a part of this thing that became famous.
Okay.
Right. So the community and its ability to actually do different things adds value for everyone. But yeah, now the blockchain is doing that thing which we thought wasn't possible, or was the opposite of the internet, where you could make endless copies of memes. And so the average photo is trending towards zero value because there's so much supply of photos, except for these JPEGs, which should follow the price curve of all the other JPEGs in the world towards zero. But because of the blockchain, they've become a Veblen good.
Yeah.
Even the concept of verifiability is really interesting to me because when you think about it, like everyone that's alive right now, or I guess not the younger people, but most people that are alive right now have lived through the one time in history where video was a sure source of truth. Like in 2005, if you saw security camera footage, like that was that. It wasn't edited. Or if it was, you could tell.
Yeah.
But now with AI or even with video editing in the last 3 to 4 years, it's so easy to fake video content. And it's no longer at a point where you can look at video and not wonder if it was edited or changed.
I don't think it is. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it is a coincidence that we're seeing the value of verifiability arrive on the internet at the same time as AI. Right? The moment you can produce endless amounts of high quality content that calls its authenticity into question, this system that is the opposite, which is going to give you verified authenticity, will rapidly increase in value.
It's going to be really interesting to see how blockchain kind of plays into like verifiability of videos.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people working on chain of custody. In other words, how do you bake into Figma the fact that you actually created that design?
That's huge,
right? You can actually do a ZK rollup of the actions that you've taken to create that web page or design, and put it on chain.
How would you describe ZK rollups in like layman's terms? They stand for zero knowledge proofs, right?
Yeah, so you can compress all of the contents of a file and know that the file is valid without having to open it.
Yeah, and then how does that relate to Figma being able to see who authored or designed a document?
So you can think of every action you take in Figma, because everything's undoable, right? So there's a chain of events that have occurred for you to place that pixel where it is. You can then compress that into effectively a ZK rollup and say, I can prove to you that I made that design.
That's huge.
Yeah,
that's very important for designers. Yeah,
100%. It really solves the problem of people stealing designs or acting like
that would change a lot.
So if you're gonna buy digital art in the future, you get the JPEG, but anybody can right click, copy paste the JPEG, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
You can also have an NFT that represents your ownership, but now you can also represent the creation of it into a ZK rollup that you also own with the NFT. So you can NFTs right now basically say you own the reference to a file.
Yeah.
The blockchain and cryptography in general is going to advance that so that you can say, we can tell from the moment the canvas was empty all the way to that JPEG being published.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, we should close on build space.
Oh,
let's talk about build
their
space.
$10 million raise, or they announced the $10 million raise, A16Z.
Because you were early, right?
Yeah, we are.
Space.
Yeah.
Oh, you were early.
Yeah. So Orange Fund, which is the venture company related to OrangeDAO, invested in Build Space several months ago.
What stage were they at? Were they doing like the spaces, or were they doing still like the
education? They were doing education right. They just gotten off the ground.
And for reference, they're here, right?
Yeah, Build Space is one of Founders Inc.'s kind of like flagship. What did you see in them? Was it Farza?
It's Farza.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We love Farza, but 100%. It's just any interaction with him is just a unique experience every time. Is that the same? Like, can you describe when you met Farza and what you thought of Farza?
Farza's gonna see this on his timeline. He's gonna be like, "Yo, what is this? Why are these guys talking about me?"
You know, you have experienced founders who have a clear vision, and what we care about. Like, we're not going to make a judgment on something that we know nothing about, right? And so he's clearly passionate about it. He was building something that he knew how to build. We all understood the analogy to Web 2. We all understood the ability to actually onboard new users was going to be super. Like, if you think about, there's 8 billion people in the world right now, and the vast majority of them will be born in an era where the blockchain is like a thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, well, then how do you get them on there? How do you educate them? That's going to be billions of people going through that process.
Interesting.
And they're essentially building like the Hogwarts, or so they describe it, the Hogwarts of like the future, this like non-traditional way of going through school.
So this is what's fun about dealing with repeat entrepreneurs, is that they can describe a concept this is the sizzle.
Yeah.
Right? If I said, oh, we're going to give you the Kaplan of, Web 3, you're like, fuck, that's fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Kaplan, anything but
right, precisely.
Were you a Kaplan student?
No, but I had a big, thick textbook for SAT prep.
Kaplan?
Never opened.
So avoid the trauma.
Yeah.
We can go to Hogwarts. Like, you can describe it as a Hogwarts. And now that's a far clearer and a positive way of describing exactly what Build Space is doing in a nutshell.
Interesting.
Right? That's a skill.
Yeah.
100%.
And if you can onboard 1 billion people, you got to be able to communicate that.
True.
And they have a lot of really cool stuff coming with the IRL concept. In Fort Mason, we have obviously the Founders Inc. lab, but there's also going to be the Build Space, I don't know what they're calling it, but like this Build Space physical location in Fort Mason attached to the same building Founders Inc. is attached to. And that's super exciting to see.
Yeah.
But I guess to close off, Ben, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at BenHub, BenHuh, and my company is Origami. So you can find out what we're doing at join Origami, origami.com.
Awesome.
And where can people find the blog about the dog toys? Is it still up?
Oh my God, no, it's long dead.
Someone acquired it for a lot of money, right?
We gave it to one of our users, I think. Like, yeah, which like they wanted they wanted to keep a community that are ongoing. That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah.
They really have the stuff that's important. They left you with the crumbs, right?
They left you with blockchain, AI.
They left blockchain, AI.
Nothing,
right? Nothing of real value.
Yeah.
All right. Here's where we cut it before it gets any worse. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, do all the fun things. We will see you next week. Peace.
Bye.